We began this short series called Hezekiah, A Call to Consecration. And I just want to do a little recap. If you weren't here last week or you have forgotten, there were 41 kings and one queen in the history of Israel and Judah. 37 of them did not do what was right in the eyes of the Lord. 5 of them did. Hezekiah was one of those 5. So we're like, what did that look like? Hezekiah was the king of Judah, and the Jewish nation had been divided into 2 by this point, around 700 BC, Israel and Judah. Hezekiah did right by recognizing the sins of his ancestors who had neglected the house of God for most of their history, frankly, and he wanted to bring reform. This neglect meant that God allowed many of them to be captured by enemy kings, the Assyrian kings namely. God's house or temple was the place where the Jewish people met with God. It was where they sought him and communed with him and worshiped him. And priests were an important part of that entire process. So when Hezekiah recognized the temple had been neglected and in fact defiled with idols and worship of other gods, he called the priests to this word we've been using, consecrate. This means he called them to purify themselves and the temple to make way for a repair in the relationship with God. Isn't that beautiful? I think we struggle to have a grid for this, but last week I used this example. I mentioned the modern day situation that came up recently where the Egyptian government is planning to build a luxury resort on Mount Sinai. So, quick recap, Mount Sinai is where Moses met with God to get the 10 Commandments. And he had to take off his shoes because the burning bush spoke to him and said, this place is holy. It's so holy, you have to take off your shoes. It's pretty holy. They're going to build a hotel there. But then, it was funny because that was met with a collective gasp last week. But actually, the places aren't holy anymore. Actually, the temple isn't a physical location somewhere in the Middle East. The temple, as I explained, is actually us now. This is the temple, not this, the people of God, where God dwells with us. And so we have ways to understand what happened then that we can apply now. We can still learn from our ancient counterparts about how God related to them and how they related to him, where they went wrong and how they got it right. And that helps inform our understanding. So we'll continue with this story as Hezekiah continues to return to the Lord by celebrating Passover. Temple's been cleansed. Some priests have been consecrated. And now he says, let's celebrate Passover. 2 Chronicles chapter 30. King Hezekiah now sent word to all Israel and Judah, and he wrote letters of invitation to the people of Ephraim and Manasseh. He asked everyone to come to the temple of the Lord at Jerusalem to celebrate the Passover of the Lord, the God of Israel. The king, his officials, and all the community of Jerusalem decided to celebrate Passover a month later than usual. Take note. They were unable to celebrate it at the prescribed time because not enough priests could be purified by then. And the people had not yet assembled at Jerusalem. So this plan for keeping the Passover seemed right to the king and all the people. So they sent a proclamation throughout all Israel, from Beersheba in the south, Dan in the north, inviting everyone to come to Jerusalem to celebrate the Passover of the Lord, the God of Israel. The people had not been celebrating it in great numbers as required in the law. At the king's command, runners were sent throughout Israel and Judah. They carried letters that said, "O people of Israel, return to the Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, so that he will return to the few of us who have survived the conquest of the Assyrian kings. Do not be like your ancestors and relatives who abandoned the Lord, the God of their ancestors, and became an object of derision, as you yourselves can see. Do not be stubborn as they were, but submit yourselves to the Lord. Come to his temple, which he's set apart as holy forever. Worship the Lord your God, so that his fierce anger will turn away from you. For if you return to the Lord, your relatives and your children will be treated mercifully by their captors, and they will be able to return to this land. For the Lord your God is gracious and merciful. If you return to him, he will not continue to turn his face from you." Man, what a proclamation. I'm even moved by it. Let's see how it went. The runners from town to town went from town to town throughout Ephraim and Manasseh, and as far as the territory of Zebulun. But most of the people just laughed at the runners and made fun of them. However, some people from Asher, Manasseh, and Zebulun humbled themselves and went to Jerusalem. At the same time, God's hand was on the people in the land of Judah, giving them all one heart to obey the orders of the king and his officials who were following the word of the Lord. This is the word of the Lord. Okay, let's pause and look at what is going on here. After the cleansing of the temple, Hezekiah invites the entire Jewish nation to celebrate in a desire to unite them. He reaches out to Israel, which is represented by Ephraim and Manasseh, and says, I'm calling you, basically, to revival. Right? This is reform, it's revival, it's restoring what has been lost. And here's some important notes. Passover was a month late, as it says. You notice that? Because not enough priests could be purified by then, and the people had not yet assembled at Jerusalem. They were just out of practice. But it wasn't just out of practice. They had totally neglected. They had just stopped following the law of celebrating Passover. So the priests didn't purify themselves. The people didn't show up. It was just a picture of real spiritual flagging. But there's a provision in the law, actually in Numbers, that it could be delayed, and it says, it seemed right to the king and all the people. Beautiful leadership, really. And uniting them, you see here, uniting them was not by political means or like the marriage of a king to another king's daughter or some other exchange of favors. Man, I feel like this is so applicable for today. He united them by saying, let's worship God. Can you imagine if we had Republicans and Democrats, these highly fractured parties and groups? We all just, maybe that sounds idealistic, but if we just worshiped, what would happen? What would God do? So Hezekiah did that, and a fractured nation invited them to unite under worship. All right, I want to look at three types of people here as we get into those verses. Ephraim and Manasseh, if we can go to it, says most of the people just laughed at the runners and made fun of them. I mean, wow. And then it says Asher, some from Manasseh, and Zebulun humbled themselves and went to Jerusalem. Judah, God gave them one heart to obey the orders of the king and his officials who were following the word of the Lord. Let's keep that for a moment. Because you've got three different dispositions among these people, right? But I feel like they're almost thinly veiled examples of what we see in Christians today. You see, I believe God is bringing revival to us now. Do you believe that? Do you see that like I see it? And we see little pockets of it here and there, but I believe it's only just getting started. And what do I mean by revival? Forget the caricatures. No, I mean people made whole, restored, healed, turning from neglecting their relationship with God and toward Him. Love. Remember that? In our nation, being restored from among God's people so we can bring it to those who don't know Him. I believe that God is inviting us to be a part of it. But it's going to happen in the church. That is where revival comes, is among His people. And I see that the church has been neglected. Not the building, the community, the gathered church in local expressions. Do you see that? Well, if you do, then you'll notice these next three that I think are often common relationships to what we see among the Jews. You have the scoffers, disillusioned, dismissive of church, the humble, cautiously returning, maybe hurt but willing. And then you see united and obedient, committed, aligned with God's word and His leaders. Now I want to just park here for a moment, because this is where I feel like, whoa, it's actually amazing to consider just how alike that thing from 2,700 years ago is to now. Many disillusioned Christians have not just stopped attending church, they've sworn it off altogether. I'm over it. too much drama. I was hurt by a pastor, leader, etc. My church is in the woods. Church is my morning coffee on my deck. So the call to church is met with a laugh. It's mocking. Have you seen that? Many of you have told me you have. 2,700 years later, the same thing exists today. I'm not saying I don't get it. I mean, there has been drama, leadership failure. The landscape is littered with it, isn't it? A lack of what God intended for the church. People are like, it's actually some of the people are idealists going, the church is not what I see in the Bible, so I'm done. And it's affected us deeply. It's affected me deeply. And I got to tell you, the stories of my own experience with church and leadership would make your toes curl. I've been in it for 30 years. You haven't been in it for 30 years and not taken on a few bruises. If we're human, it affects us. I see this today. I sympathize with it. Jesus sympathizes with it. We had a woman come to us 2 weeks ago, my wife and I. She said, I have to ask for your forgiveness. We were like, oh my gosh, what happened? And she goes, I was just resentful of you. I was just angry with you. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry, what did we do? And she goes, nothing. It's just because of your position. Just because of the role you play in the church as an elder. I'm just angry with you. I'm sorry. I said, it's okay. I forgive you. I'm sorry for whatever you experienced. It's disillusionment. I'm so glad we can have those conversations. I'm so glad she came forward. I think she probably waited quite a long time because she didn't know what was going on inside of her. I don't think we know what's going on, but even if you're here, we're like this here. God actually is calling us to something. I love the woods. Love camping. I've traveled all over this country to sleep in the woods, hike, canoe. I love it. I meet God there, no doubt. But that's not church. You are my church. A building isn't my church, the body of Christ. Sometimes I wish I was in the woods having to deal with some Christians, but I have a witness. But the church is not defined by my experience or what I feel. It's defined by God. This temple, the worship, our togetherness, his plan is very specific, and the church is God's only plan. He isn't giving us alternatives. The Bible's clear on that. So go with me here because we want to give our attention to this. This is really what this is all about. They're coming back to his original plan. And I think this ancient Hezekiah scenario can feel a bit removed from our faith journey in 21st century America. All the purifying and cleansing and sacrificing. And because we're tempted to look at them and say, well, we don't have to cleanse ourselves anymore. How archaic. Glad we don't have to live back then. It's just weird. But sin is still real and God's hatred of it hasn't changed. And we still need him. So we've been talking about, in many ways, all morning and for the last several weeks. Actually, he still has a prescription for all of it. And though it's different, it's no less detailed and important. You see, the temple of God in the Old Testament was built to exact specifications. Think about that. Have you ever read 1 Kings 6? It's this many cubits and that, and this goes there, and it's very, very specific. But actually, there's still specifications for the temple today. The new temple, which began with Christ's ascension, has very detailed specifications. I mean, the question is, how biblical do you want to be? How biblical do we want to be as followers of Christ? Because it's all there. It's not just let's chuck that stuff. Here, Hezekiah is endeavoring to be faithful to God's original plan. In verse 8, he says, submit yourselves to the Lord. Come to this temple, which he has set apart as holy forever. We are set apart, and God has given us the way of life. He describes the new temple all over the New Testament, but most vividly in the book of Acts. You'll be familiar with it. Acts 2, listen, verse 43, it says, 42, all the believers devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship and to sharing in meals, including the Lord's Supper, and to prayer. He's just describing this is what it looked like. A deep sense of awe came over them all, and the apostles performed many miraculous signs and wonders. All the believers met together in one place and shared everything they had. They sold their property and possessions and shared the money with those in need. They worshiped together at the temple each day. We're actually going to start having church every day. You guys good? Met in homes for the Lord's Supper and shared their meals with great joy and generosity. Don't you love that? I mean, there are very few Christians that don't hear that and their heart's just not kind of warmed about the Acts 2 church. Isn't that true? We love the miraculous signs and wonders. But sharing everything we have, serving, gathering as often as they did, God said, you want to know what it looks like? There it is. But much of it we kind of just consider optional. I'll take this bit and not that bit. And he's like, no, this is what it looks like. I mean, if you actually look at the way Jesus lived, it was just like this. We're just following a group in Acts. We're following him into this. People say, I'm part of the global church. Yes, we all are. Check. Once you put your faith in Christ, you become a part of the global church. But then God calls you to a community. I love the global church, the universal church. I have Christian friends all over the world. I love my friend Tenterica in Madagascar. We only see each other every couple of years, but it's so sweet. But I don't live my daily life with him. I'm not accountable to him in the same way I'm accountable to our elders and all of you. The global church is cool, but it's not a place we're called to excuse ourselves from a local community. Even today, his temple has specs. It starts with biblically qualified, recognized leadership. First it was apostles, then it moves on to elders. You can't get away from it. Everywhere you read this in the book. I think people are opting for alternatives because of hurt, because of disillusionment. I think sometimes one of the most appealing things to Christian organizations is that they're not the church, and they don't have elders or pastors. Does that feel as incongruent to you as it does to me? That the most appealing thing about it is that it's not according to God's way? They have worship sessions and preaching and small groups and meals and communion, but they lack one vital thing that makes a church a church. It's elders. Biblically qualified, accountable attendance of the bride. I know there's a lot of organizations out there that have conferences and speakers and music and ministry, but can I just say, church, beware if the leadership is not as prescribed by in his word. That is what he told us to do. It's not a guarantee it'll go well. We've all seen that, but it will never align with God's plan for a local expression of believers unless it has that. Now, I'm an elder. So frankly, the temptation for me would be to shy away from this, kind of cut a wide swath around it. Like I'm trying to, promote my position. We're just trying to do this right. And I am so grateful for the other 4 elders in this church. I'm grateful for their input in my life, for the accountability they gave me. And we are accountable to other elders and apostolic gifts in our church network. This is why we have the network we belong to. We want to invite others to come in and say, hey, are you guys considering this? We had a couple guys in over the summer, John Marshall from California, Tom Tapping from down in North Carolina. We've got a conference coming up in October. It's why we do this. We are not loners. We want to be accountable. We want eyes on what we're doing. Why? To serve you best. Because we've seen when it goes wrong. Have you seen when it goes wrong? These are safeguards against it going wrong. It's not just good to have them. You want to have them in a healthy way. When we appointed our last elder, actually who was appointed, Pat, we had another elder from another church, Brian Hart, come, and he preached so beautifully on the humble role of the attendant to the bride. That's what we are. We're not to be worshiped. We're to actually serve the church in worshiping him. That's the church. You're welcome to talk to any of those people about our leadership. I hope you talk to us first, but that's the kind of open cards we want to play because of the abuses of the past. We understand how it's gone wrong. And our job is not just to avoid doing that, but put things in place that protect against that. Is this okay? I want to pause on this because you see that all of this reform started with leaders who were consecrated. And they called people and they followed the word of the Lord. That's what we want to do. That's what we want to continue to practice and practice well under God. 1 Peter 5 says, you young people must accept the authority of the elders. I always think, is it just because the young people have to? No, but I think actually we, when we're young, are like, I got this. You're not the boss of me. That's why we're calling young men to count the cost of discipleship, because that's part of it. Not so that we can be worshiped, not so that we can be made big. Actually, that same passage says, don't lord your authority over people. You will be held to account by the great shepherd one day. Whew, I look at that wide-eyed. The church is designed in such a specific way, actually. It requires things of us that are part of how we access the rich life that God has set out for us. But listen, all that stuff we see in Acts, I've just seen over the years, we kind of negotiate with God on that stuff. I hear you, Lord, but here's my counteroffer. Gathering, I can make 2 Sundays a month. I don't get much out of small groups anymore, so probably not that. And he's saying, go and give to small group. Don't just look to get. He prescribes it for our benefit. Let's grow up into the head who is Christ. I'll give some money if I have some left over at the end of the month. And prayer, it's a bit boring. I honestly just don't even totally get the point. So, we good? It's my counteroffer. Slide it across the table, expecting a signature. From scoffers to negotiators, he's calling us higher. He's calling us higher. He's just said, it's not complicated. It's going to require something of you. But if you give yourself to it, this is the rich life. It's the way Jesus lived. The church is God's plan A. He doesn't have a plan B. He says, no, my perfect plan is plan A. Let's stick with that. We're actually going to see in our upcoming Revelation series, he's coming back for the church. To laugh at that, to mock that, it's not just wrong, it's terrifying. Most of us know people who, maybe even for good reason, are hesitant. Maybe that's you here today. I understand how you got there, but don't stay there. The stakes are too high. Or maybe you say, maybe you've heard this one, I love God but not the church. You heard that one? It's chilling, because for me, if I go, hey, Peter and Shirley, I'd love to have you come over to the house. And Peter's like, dude, I would love to hang, but I actually really don't like your wife. Be like, but okay, so what happened? Like, did something happen? Like, I can work with you on that, but actually, if we only land in the place where you just don't like my wife, I don't even know how much relationship we can have. Like, we are one. She is me. I am her. Like, you get me, you get her. Jesus is saying, no. You can't love me and not my bride. I am one. You worship a decapitated Jesus. Just the head. I'll take just the head. It's a mess. He knows better than you do how much of a mess it truly is. But he's going, we go together. I must only love God and his church. He doesn't offer us an alternative. The second group, just to look quickly, it says they humbled themselves and came to Jerusalem. They came to the temple to be a part of what God was doing through his king. And if you're here today, this is in some ways the kind of low bar of entry, but it's good. It may describe you. You've come to be part of what the king is doing in his temple. For some, it requires great humility because of what you've experienced, because of your justifiable skepticism. Is that you here today? Oh man, I'm with you. You're here because you say, my experience does not determine my obedience. God does. Well done. So you submit to that. Then I want to quickly go on to this third group, which is really compelling. They don't laugh and they don't just show up, they're together in it. It could have just said they came too, but it distinguishes them for their unity, doesn't it? A unity that they did not have on their own, but that God gave to them. Because it's one thing to show up, it's another thing to be vitally connected to one another in what is happening. To be together in the thing. Listen, they had one heart to obey the orders of the king and his officials who were following the word of the Lord. They didn't just come unified. They came to obey the authority that was following the word of the Lord. If I haven't convinced you about the importance of healthy eldership in the church, here it is. God's appointed authority is important, and they knew it. Let's look at the final few verses. On the 14th day of the second month, 1 month later than usual, the people slaughtered the Passover lamb. This shamed the priests and Levites, so they purified themselves and brought burnt offerings to the temple of the Lord. Then they took their places at the temple as prescribed in the law of Moses, the man of God. The Levites brought the sacrificial blood to the priests, who then sprinkled it on the altar. Since many of the people had not purified themselves, the Levites had to slaughter their Passover lamb for them, to set them apart for the Lord. Most of those who came from Ephraim, Manasseh, Issachar, and Zebulun had not purified themselves, but King Hezekiah prayed for them, and they were allowed to eat the Passover meal anyway, even though this was contrary to the requirements of the law. For Hezekiah says, now listen to his prayer here, it's beautiful. May the Lord who is good pardon those who decide to follow the Lord, the God of their ancestors, even though they're not properly cleansed for the ceremony. And the Lord listened to Hezekiah's prayer and healed the people. So the people of Israel who were present in Jerusalem joyously celebrated the festival of unleavened bread for 7 days. Each day the Levites and priests sang to the Lord, accompanied by loud instruments. You start to see this incredible picture of revival. Hezekiah encouraged all the Levites regarding the skill they displayed as they served the Lord. Isn't that awesome? The king's like, well done, guys. You're crushing on the worship set. That's amazing. He's just celebrating this. He's getting so excited, and the people gave thanks to the Lord and the God of their ancestors. The entire assembly then decided to continue the festival another 7 days. Let's not stop the party. So they celebrated joyfully for another week. King Hezekiah gave the people 1,000 bulls and 7,000 sheep and goats for offerings, and the officials donated 1,000 bulls and 10,000 sheep and goats. Meanwhile, many more priests purified themselves. The entire assembly of Judah rejoiced, including priests, Levites, all who came from the land of Israel, the foreigners who came to the festival, and all those who lived in Judah. Those who weren't even Jews came and were able to partake in this thing. There was great joy in the city, for Jerusalem had not seen a celebration like this one since the days of Solomon, King David's son. That was 250 years ago. Then the priests and Levites stood and blessed the people, and God heard their prayer from his holy dwelling in heaven. I just want to close by looking at what is happening here. We see things are out of order, but order is coming. They celebrate 1 month late, but they celebrated. The priests couldn't slaughter the lamb, and they were ashamed, so they consecrated themselves. Others weren't purified, so the Levites slaughtered their lambs. I mean, it's a bit of a mess. You get the incredible sense that so many people were falling short, but they were helping each other. And they were humbling themselves under God. They were recognizing their need to turn around and follow this ancient way of God, his commands. But then there was still this big issue of those not being purified, especially some of them who laughed and mocked. Did you see that? Some of the laughers and mockers, they came anyway. I love that. But it says most of those who came from Ephraim, Manasseh, Issachar, and Zebulun had not purified themselves, but King Hezekiah prayed for them. And now we see it. Do you see what's happening here? This is Old Testament stuff, but the new covenant is all over it. Jesus is all over it. Last week I said Hezekiah was a forerunner of Jesus who came to cleanse the temple once and for all. Here, Hezekiah prays for those who weren't purified. He intercedes on their behalf. Isn't that beautiful? The king interceding on their behalf. Oh, it just reminded me of this Romans 8 scripture. Who then will condemn us? No one, for Christ Jesus died for us and was raised to life for us, and he's sitting in the place of honor at God's right hand, pleading for us. We have the same benefit. We come messy. We come impure. We come having neglected. And he says, but just come. And I will intercede on your behalf. And God will bless you. Jesus is not just the intercessor. He is the sacrifice. Some weren't pure, couldn't slaughter the lamb. God covered their shame and provided. Is it clear to you that God wasn't looking for perfection, folks? He knew exactly where they were at, how pure they were not. But they came. Even the laughers and the mockers came. Maybe that's you here today. You don't even know why you came. You've struggled. You're hurt, annoyed, frustrated. You said you'd never come back to church. That's what they did. And God provided. He wasn't there waiting to smite them for their laughing, mocking impurity. He was there with a plan to make it right. We still need to be cleansed from the unrighteousness of sin. That still requires a sacrifice. We must accept that sacrifice and give ourselves to this means of grace. He's provided for our healing, our salvation. We must receive the forgiveness that comes through the sacrificial. He was the lamb. It didn't require 7,000 bulls and 1,000 lambs or whatever it was. It just got distilled down into one. One who could do it. Today, God's people don't live in the day of his wrath. Jesus has withheld it. But actually, if you look in Revelation, it will come one more time. And it's those who are covered in the blood of the Lamb, just like the Passover, that will be spared and live in eternity with him. Revelation 22, the final chapter, says the Spirit and the bride say, come. The Spirit and the bride working together. Come, and let the one who hears say, come. And let the one who is thirsty come. Let the one who desires take the water of life without price. He's calling us back, not just to him, but to his bride. Not just to the head, but to his body. Not just to my individual life with God in the woods, which I love, but actually he's calling you back to the temple. I'd like to invite the band up, and I just want to share this story from yesterday that made all this land with me so poignantly. So I told you I got into this mountain biking accident. It was like the worst in probably 2 years. This message is brought to you by ibuprofen. I literally thought I broke my hip. I flew off my bike. I flew. I had just gone past these two people. I was 100 yards down the trail. I don't know what happened, and I flew off my bike. And can I be honest with you? As I'm flying, I'm like, this is going to be a bad one. You know how that happens? And you have so many clear thoughts in like a half a second. Do you know what the thing that popped into my mind was? My insurance deductible. I know it's supposed to be my wife and kids, but it's a big number. And I landed on the trail, and I hear from these two people, they go, are you okay? They could hear it, they couldn't see me. And I'm like, yes! I'm not sure if my hip is not broken. I mean, it hurts so bad. So they come running down the trail, and it's a man and a woman. And the woman says, don't move. I was like, okay. She goes, where did you hit? And I said, I landed on my hip. I feel like it's broken. She goes, I broke my hip 4 years ago. That's coincidental. And I looked up at her and I go, you're young. You broke your hip? She goes, I'm not young, I'm 52. No, I'm arguing with this woman about how young she is. I was like, that's young, I'm 53. Anyway, And she just says, don't move. She goes, I know what it feels like, and I know what it looks like, and I know what's going to happen to you if you've broken your hip. I was so comforted. She said, can you straighten it out? I said, yes. Can you wiggle your toes? I said, yes. Can you bring it back up? I said, yes. She goes, does it hurt? And I said, it does, but I can do it. So we finally get to, she goes, look, you're not in shock, which I went right into. Your hip is not broken. Do you know how important it is to have somebody with you that's been through what you've gone through? Do you know how important it is for somebody who's been treated horribly by religious leaders? Forget my story. Jesus has stories that would make your toes curl. No one was treated worse by religious leaders than him. No one realizes the pain of abandonment and betrayal. I don't know what you've experienced, but he experienced it and worse. And the reason he can be the sacrifice is because he did what none of us can do. He stood there, he was hung there on the cross, and he looked out at all of those people who had mistreated him, and he didn't say, curse you, and send fire down from heaven. He said, forgive them, Father, they know not what they do. That's why he is the perfect, spotless sacrifice. Crazy thing is, the guy, he was picking up my bike, he put the chain back on, and he starts to see me move, and he starts to see me kind of come to life, and he goes, hon, he's fine, let him go. Here, your bike's ready, go for it. And I'm like, who's the angel and who's the devil here? I can't figure it out. And then I realized the answer is both and neither. Because when you've actually realized you're okay to keep going, you must keep going. I didn't quit mountain biking. I am in a lot of pain right now, but I am going to get back on that thing as soon as I can. And he goes, I think you're going to be okay. Here it is, get up and ride. And instead of going back to my car, I actually did the lion's share of the trip I was planning to do in the first place. And I thought, you need somebody there who says, I know how that feels, and you're going to be okay. And then you need somebody else who says, keep going. Keep going. Come back to church. Come back to him. Come back despite the pain, despite the disappointment, the frustration, the angst, the anxiety. We need them both. Yeah. Where are you today? In the hurt and disillusionment, or the pain, or the journey, or the struggle? Do you need to just get back on the bike and go? Maybe you need a moment. Take it. But don't eject. Don't just leave the bike there and walk back to the car. God is calling us. Can I call us, not just to engage, to stand right now and to sing in light of this incredible truth? That he knows your pain, he knows your suffering. He is not uncompassionate, but he is calling us all to something bigger, greater, that he designed and he determined for his glory. Who else? Who else is worthy? Who else is the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world?